Welcome to Facebook. I'm really glad you're all here. It's going to be a great day. I'm going to have a hard time without a clicker. There we go. Now I'm equipped. Thank you. So as Ashley mentioned, I've been at Facebook a little over 3 years, and I've definitely seen a lot of our evolution from a really pretty web-focused company to one that embraces mobile. And you know, I would be the last person to claim that we have mastered mobile, but I think we've probably made a lot of mistakes, maybe more mistakes than any other app maker. So hopefully, at a minimum, I can share some of those with you and some of the lessons we've learned along the way. So first, a little context setting about why I'm so excited about mobile. And you know, this is probably fairly obvious to this audience, but mobile's a big deal, and one of the reasons is because it's come along so fast. From the invention and first introduction of landlines, it took almost a century to reach a mere 100 million users, 100 million subscribers to fixed lines. Whereas mobile, we probably had the first really commercially available cellular services in, say, the mid-70s. And in less than 4 decades, we're reaching orders of magnitude more people. So the rate of disruption from mobile is immense. Second, mobile's a really personal device. You identify with it in a fundamental way, even more so than your desktop or your laptop. You actually, when someone calls your phone, they're calling you. It fits in your hand, it fits in your pocket, it's with you all the time. And we use them under extremely personal circumstances. I think, let me see a show of hands. How many of you will cop to using your phone while you're in bed? Roughly half, more than half of us, all right. We've probably some selection bias in this room. All right, how about this one? This is a little less common, but some of us probably still do it. I will not ask for a show of hands on the third one, but at least in anonymous surveys, about 40% will even admit to this one. And some of you will admit to it. So what I would say is our phone is really tied up with our identity. Our mobile phone is tied up with our identity in a way that our fixed line is not, in a way that our desktop is not. Third reason mobile phones are pretty exciting is that they're incredibly powerful. It's not just a telephone. It's not just a communication device for receiving texts or emails. It's not just a camera. It's not just a GPS. It is a platform for reaching hundreds and thousands of applications and services. And it has, I'll tie this to the image, it has 100,000 times more processing power than the Apollo guidance computer that landed Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. So we are all walking around with supercomputers in our pockets. Some of us are walking around with 2 or 3 supercomputers in our pockets. So when am I going to talk about Facebook? Well, we think that Facebook and mobile are getting closer and closer to being the same thing. You probably know we have over 1 billion people using Facebook. You might assume correctly that most of them are accessing Facebook on mobile. So mobile's obviously a big deal for Facebook. We think Facebook is also a pretty big deal for mobile because it turns out that between Facebook and Instagram, users spend a whopping 20% of their time. 1 in 5 of the minutes you spend with your phone is spent with our services, which is amazing and humbling at the same time. And given those stats, I fully expect some of you are on Facebook right now, and many more of you will be by the end of the talk. That's aces with me. All right, but it wasn't always this rosy. In fact, I would say as recently as a year ago, you know, the headlines were this: Facebook sucks on mobile. The app is crappy. We can't monetize it. Mobile's actually going to be Facebook's doom. So why? Not just why were we so bad, but how do we turn it around? We got a lot of things wrong along the way, and we've talked about some of them publicly. But I think in digging ourselves out of this hole, we're also learning a lot of things and getting them right. So one of the biggest ones is you really got to put users first. When I joined this company 3 years ago in 2010, the mobile team was like this little team literally in the basement. And you had a newsfeed team and a photos team and a messaging team, and you had a different team for every area of our product or feature, and they were all building for the web. And the mobile team was this one little tiny team that was sort of frantically trying to port every single feature from every single team as fast as they could to iOS. And we won't talk about what we were doing on Android because it's just too embarrassing to confess publicly. But it wasn't good numbers, is what I'm trying to say. And it was evident to us in 2010 that this was not good, that mobile was the future, and that we actually needed to unleash all of our product developers onto mobile. And to us, the obvious way to do that was with HTML5. We already were building these fantastic web stacks to deliver functionality to our users faster. We had a lot of engineers who knew the web stack very, very well. It seemed quite plain to us that the way to invest as heavily as possible in mobile as quickly as possible was to bet big on HTML5. And in some ways, that was true. Our pace of releasing new features to mobile went through the roof when we adopted HTML5. We were delivering much more rapid iteration. We came far closer to feature parity between web and mobile. I remember I was working on Newsfeed at the time, not mobile, but we had built a massive redesign of the homepage, and it took us almost a year to sort of perfect and come up with the final design that we wanted. And we were able to bring that to iOS in about a month. And so it gave us a tremendous speed up and a tremendous increase in bandwidth of what we could bring to users. But there was just one thing wrong with it. And that was that it could not deliver the performance and responsiveness and feeling of using a native application. And we fought that realization very hard, because everything about native was going to be really difficult for us, and everything about HTML came so easy. And we tried every hook and crook and optimization. There are definitely still some people at Facebook who feel we should have tried even harder. But at the end of the day, we could not convince ourselves that HTML5 was better for our users. And so we swallowed that pill, and we made the tough call. And it is really tough. And I hope if you ever face an existential decision like this, you also will have the courage to make it, which was to jettison the HTML path and pivot and rebuild on native. And we did that. And we were able to ship native iOS and Android apps. I guess iOS was probably about 15 months ago now, and I think we're right on the 1-year anniversary of the fully native Android app. So we've been working on native for the last year. And I think it's enabled us to deliver much, much better experiences for users. But native's not a silver bullet. You move from HTML to native, and you get some stuff is much better off. New capabilities are unlocked. But some stuff gets a lot harder. And one thing that was extremely important to us was to move fast. The ethos of product development at Facebook is not to have the arrogance to assume that we will invent the perfect, exact right product in a vacuum, but that we're going to ship something small and quick and get feedback and see how users use it and organically and almost evolutionarily develop our apps. That was a good fit in the web world. It's tougher on native. I am old enough to remember I started my career in software engineering in the dark days of the 90s, when software development was for desktop was the rule. And those were kind of the dark ages. If you lived through the 90s, you know that the web was transformative. We used to sort of, design software for 3 months, build features for 3 months, and then test and fix bugs for another 6 months. Because once you launched that software and printed it on a CD and sent it out to the world in a box, it was gone. And you didn't really know if software was successful because of the decisions you made or in spite of the decisions you made. You couldn't tell how people were using it. And the web changed everything. It was transformative. It let us go fast. It let us adjust things every day. It let us see what users were using and what they were ignoring. It let us fix bugs extremely rapidly. There was no such thing as a sustaining team, because once we fix a bug, we roll that fix to our servers. We're done. Mobile's kind of in between. The code does not run on our servers. It runs on users' devices. Users control when it updates. Updating has a cost. Even if our app is free, users still have to pay for the data to download it. And we don't have like all the sort of same control and ability to do whatever we want whenever we want to, as we would if the code was running on our own servers. At the same time, it's not as bad as the dark ages of the desktop either. These devices are tethered. They have a network connection almost all the time. And we have learned so much from the web days that we can bring to our technology stacks. And so one of the big decisions we figured out early on, and I think a lot of you have probably made the same decision, is that we had to have a train release model. One thing that's great about the web at Facebook is it's really a train. Not only do we ship every day, we actually ship twice a day, most days of the week. And that relieves a lot of pain that I knew from the desktop days. There's no such thing as scheduled chicken when you're shipping twice a day, because your feature ships when it's ready. And it became pretty obvious on mobile, although we cannot ship twice a day, that the value of having a really predictable release train that was going to leave no matter what, every 4 weeks, like clockwork, every fourth Thursday, we ship our mobile apps on iOS and on Android. And if a feature is ready to go, if it's baked, if it's polished, if it looks good, it's performant, it gets on that train and it ships. And if it's not ready, if it has launch blocking bugs, if they've failed to do all the testing they need to do, hey, that feature sits it out and catches the next train. And it's OK, it's not the end of the world. And so having a train model is one of the most important things that we've done on mobile, and one of the most important things to do if you have any number of engineers working on different projects. So another thing that mobile has kind of brought back for us from the dark ages is this idea of the QA matrix, the device compatibility matrix that we get when we have many different devices, many different operating system versions, and an app ecosystem we don't control, unlike the sort of perfectly controlled operating environment that our web server tier represents. In desktop land, we used to try to handle this with just like these immense QA matrices where we would try to test every combination of the three-dimensional cube, and it was pretty ugly and it took a long time. And it slowed us down in getting software to users. But if you don't test every combination, you can have exciting bugs like one that affected our photos team earlier this year. So we noticed, this one made it to production. We noticed that we were getting a spike in complaints from users about photo uploads crashing. And it was inconsistent. It wasn't a huge volume, but it was an increase. And what really tipped us off to what was going on is that we noticed that that complaint was correlated with users of a particular sort of dozen different devices. Not necessarily from the same manufacturer. But what we found those dozen devices had in common was the same chipset on their CPU. And that was actually a smoking gun, because we run very little native code in our Android app. But we did introduce a native resizer to compress the photo and make it smaller before we upload it. And so this pointed the finger very clearly at that body of code. And luckily for us, we had a server-side switch that controlled whether that resizer ran or not. And so we were, in fact, as soon as we realized that that was the problem, we were able to turn it off server-side. So uploads started working again. They stopped crashing for those users. They were slower because we weren't compressing the photo before we sent it, but they worked. And that team was also able to quickly narrow down, reproduce the bug, fix it, and ship that fix in the next train. And 4 weeks later, those users had a more satisfactory upload experience. So a couple lessons learned here. First of all, it was great that we had the monitoring of user complaints, because this wasn't manifesting as a major bump in crashes. It was good that we had the analytics to correlate those complaints with those devices. And it was good that we had a server-side control over different features of the application, so we could turn something off that was an optional feature that was causing a worse experience. And it was good that we had the train model so we could quickly get a fix out to users. But nonetheless, bugs like this shouldn't make it to production at all. And so what are you going to do about having enough devices that you're going to test every flow in your application on every device, every operating system combination? You're not going to be able to construct a QA lab that catches every one of these. And so what we did is invite our users to help us, and they have rallied and done so. And what's been transformative to us is to launch a beta program on Android. And we have now close to 1 million users in our beta program, such that if we were to ship a bug like this again, people with those phones would be represented. That crazy three-dimensional matrix is represented in our beta program. And so now we can find issues like this before we ship, based on users who have volunteered to help us find these issues. We can solve them and not hit production with it. So that's been a pretty big success. Now, Facebook also likes to use data not just to assist us with debugging, but also actually to assist with product design. We don't like to design features in a vacuum, declare them perfect, put a bow on them, and then show them to users. We actually like to expose our designs to users, see what works and what doesn't, and develop our products in a way that actually maximizes the impact, the value we're delivering to folks. And the beta program's been phenomenal for discovering bugs and getting a really tight iteration cycle when we're trying to debug what's wrong. But those users have a big selection bias. It's the set of users who put up their hand and volunteered to say, why, yes, Facebook, I would like to test for you. And so they are not really representative of our production user base when it comes to things like, what's an average number of stories, newsfeed stories, or minutes that people spend. So it was important to us to have a source of user data in addition to just the beta program. And we built an A/B testing framework for our applications so that we could run product design experiments with new product designs and expose them to representative small samples of our user base. And so we put this into action with a new design that we were working on last summer. You probably recognize this image on the left. This is what the navigation bar used to look like in our iOS app, still looks like in Android. And that little sort of 3 horizontal line stack, I think we sort of is now universal code for this is a menu, but Facebook actually invented that. And we decided that we'd outgrown it, that this sort of list, this laundry list of things on the left here was sort of immense and hard to navigate. And we wanted to make it simpler and easier and fewer taps to get to the most commonly used actions. And so we made up our minds to implement a nav bar, which you see on the right, which was codenamed Harrison. And we worked all summer. We got a great designer, small team, stuck them in a war room, iterated rapidly, built a design we feel really good about. Gets people quickly to the top level items, helps them move around the app. Our user research studies, when we sort of got people behind the one-way mirror, users loved it. They felt that the app was fast. They told us the app was faster. We knew the app was not faster, but the tab bar made it feel faster because they actually could more rapidly get to where they were going. They had to tap once instead of twice. So big win. Ready to ship, right? Right? Wrong. So we shipped it in a 1% test. And it was really good, except for one thing, which is the users in the test were liking and commenting less than similar users outside the test, which is a big deal to us because liking and commenting implies, if you're liking and commenting less, it implies that you're seeing fewer of the stories that you came to Facebook to see. So we're kind of failing in our core mission on the planet if we ship a change that gives you less of what you want. So we started digging into this. And what we figured out the problem is that people were spending less time in newsfeed because they'd sort of read their feed, and then the pattern at the tab bar would sort of take you to other places via notifications or messages. And then as you were sitting there in the app, new stories would be coming in, but there would be no clue, nothing to guide you back to your newsfeed to read those new stories. You were missing the new things that came in during your session. And the old navigation pattern kind of dragged you back through newsfeed, whatever you were doing. This one, you could go sort of directly to different places, and you finished them, you left. So we sort of sprang into action, and we tried a whole bunch of variations. We probably tried dozens of different tests, different combinations of UI and refresh speed, and sort of how to indicate to users that there was new content for them in the app. And so this is sort of the Goldilocks of product design. I call it, because sort of the one on the left was the original design that I showed you. It's sort of too cold. You navigate away from newsfeed, you don't come back. Well, we tried a more extreme design that sort of in the middle here, which was kind of the too hot version. We badged it with a bubble that told you how many new stories there were. And that was really successful. If anything, users were seeing even more stories and liking and commenting even more. But a lot of us felt that this was like a pretty bad violation of an implicit expectation on the user's part, which is every other place where we use that red bubble, there's something specifically calling for the user's attention. There's a notification on a post that they're following. Someone has mentioned them. Someone has sent them a message. We've never notified you for something passive like, hey, some new newsfeed stories came in. And so we thought that was overkill. It was like an anvil to the head. And so the winning design, the just right pot of porridge, was here on the right. And it's so subtle that you may not even be able to see it. I'll blow it up for you. We actually added a little subtle blue glow to the newsfeed icon on the tab bar, which is just enough to kind of subliminally get your attention that there's something going on over here, and it brings you back. And if you're an iPhone user, that blue glow, you may have never noticed that blue glow before, but trust me, it's working. The metrics tell us it's working on you to bring your attention back to newsfeed. And so that's what we shipped in the end. And so as proud as we were of the new navigation design, as much better for users as it was, as much as users told us they loved it, having that A/B testing framework and being able to see at very fine granularity what was working and what wasn't actually helped us avoid a pretty tragic mistake and a pretty bad reduction in value to our users. And so we're pretty happy about solving it. But we also know that data cannot do your design for you. Right? Like the data would have told us that the middle design here was the best one. That was the one that actually maximized likes and comments. But you've got to actually still have a design hat. You've got to have an ethos of building a beautiful app, one that carries out a contract with the user that honors their mental model of what the app is supposed to be doing. And so the data should inform your design. It shouldn't dictate it. All right, probably the last thing I want to say about mobile is it's simultaneously one of the biggest opportunities of mobile, but one of the most challenging things about mobile is that it's a real chance to reach the rest of the world. Not just Silicon Valley, US, Europe, not just the privileged places with lots of money. As software developers, we kind of get to cheat a little bit because hardware and platforms are getting better every year, and so we can pile in more features and make our apps bigger and take more resources because every year the devices are more powerful. But actually, if you look at the rapid expansion of mobile, the whole emerging world is coming online, and they're coming online with mobile devices. And this is like fundamentally huge for Facebook because our mission is to connect the whole world. Not just the 2 billion people who have internet access, but like there's another 5 billion human beings on this planet who we can't even reach if they don't have internet access. And we're going to be able to reach them, and we're going to be able to reach them because of mobile. Those people may never have a broadband connection or a desktop or a laptop, but they are going to have a phone, and it's going to have data. And so we can depend on mobile, as we can bet on mobile as the platform to reach them, but we can also do our best to put our finger on the scales and help. So Facebook has always premised ourselves as a platform, not just an app. And we have always offered services like login and distribution and even ads, but we've got to do more. If we want to achieve our mission, if we want to reach all of humanity, we need to actually enlarge the pie and grow the whole ecosystem for all of us. And so we've launched a partnership with carriers and handset manufacturers called Internet.org, which is attempting to reach those next 5 billion users and bring them online on the internet. And we're also trying to do a whole lot more for the application ecosystem, both with our open source efforts, and a number of the tools I've talked about are things that we've open sourced, and fundamentally also with Parse and with days like today. Because if we can make mobile successful, if we can make mobile platforms successful, if we can make mobile app developers successful, we can enlarge the pie, we can bring users online, and we can fundamentally try to achieve our goal, which is to help the whole world represent who they are and connect and share with one another. And that's like pretty far away from being done. We've got a whole lot of work to do. But I'm looking forward to the next steps, and I'm looking forward to what we can accomplish today. Thank you very much, and have an awesome day.